The world is filled with colour. Excluding the vast range of colours we find naturally occurring, we have the colour of the cars we drive, the colour of the clothes we wear, and for many, even the colour of our hair. But rarely do we see such a range of colour in woodworking. Sure, we have the range of naturally occurring colours from pale maple to vibrant purpleheart to stunning bubinga. But when it comes to adding colour to woodworking, it's kind of frowned upon. Why is it so sacrilegious to have colour in woodworking? It seems like you're seen as a heretic if you include colour. A project instantly becomes DIY rather than fine furniture if you have your projects anything other than wood coloured. Except it's okay if you use a stain to make one wood look like another wood. Except it's okay if it's pine or poplar, as they're paint grade woods. Except if it's outdoor furniture, that's okay because that makes sense, right? Except if it's milk paint, particularly if it's period authentic mint green interior, that just looks super weird in a modern setting. Except if it's the slight differences between oil and water-based finishes, or if you use a garnet or amber shellac, they're okay because they're traditional. There are of course other exceptions. Carvings, turnings and instruments all get a free pass and are permitted to use colour. And sure, I get it. Painting an expensive, gorgeous hardwood is a bit of a crime because why use wood if you're going to just hide it? Why not use plywood, MDF or other materials like plastic or metal? But what about stains, dyes and translucent paints? Even those seem to still draw ire. Perhaps this is why epoxy has captured so many people's imaginations of late. You can tint and dye epoxy to your heart's content because it's not woodworking, it's resin smithing. Wood and tinted resin, that's fine, you're not touching the colour of the wood. Searching Instagram for hashtag woodworking is a great example of a sea of tones of cherry, maple and walnut, and t-shirt salespeople. Occasionally you'll see a luthier pop in with a gorgeously dyed guitar, usually a sunburst pattern. There are of course exceptions, but the vast majority of non-wood colour comes from epoxy. Recently I picked up some dyes meant for wood and other porous materials, and yes, these do target the DIY market, but for me they are a great choice because I can actually get them here in Australia. And before you ask, no, it's not sponsored by the makers of the dye. I'm sure there is a quote-unquote pro-grade dye available, but only if you know the secret handshake and sacrifice the correct fuzzy mammal on the third Wednesday of every month. This is my initial test. So the colour is perhaps a little bit more vibrant, with less graceful transitions between the colours than what I wanted. But when you consider the incredibly bland beach it was applied to, I think most will agree for this application is at least an improvement. Now I'm not saying that all projects should be entirely coated with garish colours like this, but perhaps as accents, contrasting panels, or a way to draw your eye to the parts of furniture you can interact with, like drawer handles, levers and so on. Many projects need no colour. As somewhat of a contradiction to the premise of this round, the wood talks for itself, or perhaps the project is not meant to draw your eye every time you walk into the room. But for some things, colour can enhance the finished product or help provide contrast to draw attention to the wood that remains unchanged. Using this dye and really whatever else I can get my hands on, I'll be experimenting with colour in future projects. Though for the most part I'll be diluting it a little bit more than this piece. A contrasting panel here, a stain table leg there, and perhaps a handle that jumps out. I invite you, dear viewer, to let me know what you think about colour in projects and why you think you or others reject them so fiercely. And to join me on this experiment in colour. I think trying something different helps the craft become less stale, and worst case, if I'm wrong, you can tell me I told you so. I'm Paul Jenkins, the Wood Knight. Thanks for watching.